Yum AB, on top of entertainment.
Ok les gars, bienvenue sur la chaîne de Young Blitz, le prime du divertissement.
Yum AB, on top of entertainment.
T'inquiète pas, le truc à la Rick Ross, tu connais, à la Maybach. Bon, les gars, t'as vu, là tu t'as cliqué sur la vidéo. Ça veut dire que t'as bien aimé la thumbnail et t'as bien aimé le titre. J'ai pris du temps à les faire, 5 minutes. Mais tu t'abonnes s'il te plaît, tu mets un like. Cette semaine-là, et ces 2 prochaines semaines, c'est une vidéo par jour, les gars, je vous régale. Je vous régale. Ok? Les gars, aujourd'hui, on va réacter à une petite vidéo tranquille. The Hunt for El Chapo. El Chapitito. Hermano, tu hablas. Je fais le vieux de allemand. J'ai pas fait espagnol, j'ai que appris sur Narcos. Bon, les gars, on va regarder cette vidéo tranquille. J'avais déjà rec, mais bon, allez, allons-y.
This is the most heavily guarded prison in Mexico. Tall mesh fences, huge
Chapitito, ouais.
watchtowers. The area is a no-fly zone. This prison
Aussi les gars, mettez un commentaire, s'il vous plaît. C'est bien pour le référencement. Commentaire plus like, ça me fait plaisir.
is considered to be unescapable. Yet today, someone will escape. This someone happens to be the world's most powerful drug lord, El Chapo. He won't use any violence.
Allez, c'est des thunes, hein. Vous savez que Pablo Escobar, c'était l'homme le plus riche du monde à son prime. Si on compte pas les gens qui cachent leur somme. Si vous voyez ce que je veux dire.
Nor will he climb over the fence. All he will do is walk into his shower and disappear. This is the story of how El Chapo became one of the most successful drug dealers in the history of mankind. How he was hunted by authorities for decades, and how he escaped them over and over again. And it's the story of how an interview with a Hollywood actor
Les gars, cavale pendant des décennies, c'est une dinguerie.
Car engine finally brought him down.
El señor de la montaña, sí, hermanito, 2015, c'est échappé, tu sais. Bon. Le V2 allemand, les gars.
Joaquin Archivado Guzman Loera was born on April 4th, 1957, in a poor family in a poor
57.
neighborhood. The village, La Tuna, in Mexico's Sierra
La Tuna,
Madre
ça veut dire le
Mountains.
don. Ceux qui
Boys
savent
here
pas.
don't grow up wishing to be astronauts, firefighters, or doctors. They want to become drug traffickers.
Nice.
It's a way to make money.
50K par semaine, frère, pour la cocaïne. Tout, non. Allez, ça, 50K par semaine, frère, tu vends de la cocaïne. J'ai envie de plancher, hein. J'ai envie de plancher 50K. Putain. Pas taxé, hein.
And money is a way out. People will call Guzman El Chapo because
200K
of
le
his
mois.
height. He doesn't grow taller than 1,67 m. El Chapo drops out of school early.
Ah
He
ouais.
doesn't even finish elementary
Ça veut dire
school.
quoi le chapeau?
Instead,
S'il y en a qui savent, pour moi, le chapeau, ça veut dire le chapeau, hein. Mais bon.
he spends his time working on the marijuana and poppy fields, a family tradition. From a young age, El Chapo is extremely ambitious. He makes friends with big names in the local drug scene, determined to rise through the ranks of Mexican organized crime. First, he becomes a so-called problem solver. Whenever a truckload of drug shipment misses schedule, El Chapo eliminates the person responsible.
Résolveur de problème, hein.
His uncompromising attitude makes him trustworthy, and he grows close to the kingpin of the Guadalajara cartel. When the boss is arrested, El Chapo keeps the business running, ultimately setting up his own organization with other traffickers, the Sinaloa cartel. He organizes cars to deliver cocaine and heroin into the United States, and he even builds border-crossing tunnels, a skill that will come in handy many years later. In those early years, one incident really puts El Chapo on the map. This is Juan Jesus Posadas. He's the Archbishop of Guadalajara and a cardinal, one of the highest ranks in the church. Posadas is a popular man. He advocates for the poor and publicly condemns drug trade. Right now, he is on his way to the airport to meet an ambassador of the Vatican. At the same time, El Chapo and his bodyguards pull into the parking lot. They are here to catch a flight to the beach resort town of Puerto Vallarta, one of El Chapo's favorite places to party. We don't know exactly what happened in this parking lot next. One thing we know for sure, though, the cardinal will not survive.
Punaise. Il a buté au calme.
This is the official version. these brothers run a drug trafficking operation out of Tijuana. They are at war with El Chapo and his cartel. They fight over drug running territory, and somehow they get wind that El Chapo is going to be at the airport that day. So one of the brothers and a group of gunmen rush there to ambush him. When they spot him and his bodyguards, they step out of their cars and open fire. El Chapo and his men run towards the terminal building, taking cover behind cars in the lot. It's raining bullets, but somehow they manage to escape without getting hit.
C'est triste, les
The
gars.
failed assassination leaves
Touchez pas à ça. Je fais comme si j'avais. Mais franchement, tuer quelqu'un pour de l'argent, c'est. L'homme est mauvais.
7 people dead, among them the cardinal. This is the version of events that authorities will publicly report. Posadas was caught in the crossfire. Wrong time, wrong place. But there are doubts about this story. His death doesn't appear like a coincidence. Forensic experts will later say it's likely that the gunman killed the cardinal deliberately. He was shot 14 times from close range.
14 balles.
Later,
Je
the
pense,
official suggested that the
14
members of
balles.
El Chapo's inner circle. Many years later,
14 balles, je pense que. Hein, je pense pas que
it's
c'était
raining bullets and killed
un
the cardinal
accident.
deliberately. He was shot 14 times. The same model Posadas sat in that day. The gunman thought it's El Chapo's car and opened fire. But the cardinal wore his robe when he was shot. He was not dressed at all like a drug lord. If the gunman killed him at a close range,
Mesquine.
how could they have
C'est un bon
confused
gars,
him
frère.
of El Chapo? Years later, the successor of Posadas will make a serious accusation. He claims the murder of the cardinal was a crime of the state.
Se trató
Ah
de un
ouais.
crimen de Estado, perpetrado por
Ça m'étonnerait pas,
la
hein.
policía
Ça m'étonnerait pas, les gars. On va faire une vidéo, vous inquiétez pas, sur les complots. Ça va être très hard. Vous allez voir mon opinion.
federal, es decir, por la policía de la PGR.
He believes the police carried out the killing for the Mexican government. Posadas had accused government officials of having ties to these cartels. Up to this day, it remains a mystery. What really happened in 1993 at Guadalajara Airport? This is El Chapo's wife, his sons, and one of his closest partners. Just 2 months ago, El Chapo was captured and brought to Altiplano Maximum Security Prison. Now the group is working on a plan to get him out. They begin by acquiring an old property 1 kilometer away from the prison. Next, they buy an old warehouse nearby. Here they store weapons in an armored pickup truck. Then they hire workers for one very specific job, digging a sophisticated tunnel.
Allez, les gars,
Back
dites-moi honnêtement, vous, à la fin de cette vidéo. Ah, attends, je vais vous dire à la fin de la vidéo.
in 1993, after the shootout at Guadalajara Airport, the Mexican government placed a bounty on El Chapo. It took just 2 weeks until he was found and arrested. He denies being responsible for the death of the cardinal. He insists that he was the supposed target of the shootout. Ultimately, the authorities believe him. They don't charge him for homicide, just for drug trafficking. He is sentenced to 20 years in Mexican prison, but he continues to run the Sinaloa cartel from behind bars. Through his lawyers, he passes orders to his closest allies. He doesn't need to be in the room to pull strings. His empire runs on whispered instructions and tightly coordinated moves. Sometimes real power is remote. With AnyDesk, you can access any desktop from anywhere. It works with all the major platforms: Windows, Mac, iOS, Linux, software up anywhere. So the Mexican Supreme Court just approved a law that makes it easier to extradite criminals like him to the US.
Ah, voilà.
Time to get out.
Les US qui veulent le garder dans leur prison.
The official version of his first prison escape is spectacular. He supposedly bribes a guard who helps him climb into a laundry cart. The guard then pushes the cart out of the cell, down the
Shit.
hallways, and through an unguarded gate to the parking lot. El Chapo jumps out and climbs into the trunk of a car. The guard gets in and drives to the outer prison gate. After a quick search, the car is waved through. Nobody checks the trunk. But again, that's just the official story. Several authors and journalists don't buy it. One argues that the prison's checkpoints were equipped with heat and motion sensors, capable of detecting any living creature, even a
Ça, c'est aux
cat.
States.
That means the alarms would have
C'est une dinguerie de s'échapper. Aux States, les gars.
gone off. Instead, the journalists suggest that El Chapo may have left the prison dressed in a police uniform, escorted by other corrupt officers. One way or another, systemic corruption likely played a role, and El Chapo put his
Ça, c'est
newly
sûr.
won freedom to use.
El enemigo público, c'est-à-dire l'ennemi public.
In the following years, the Mexican cartel landscape changes dramatically. In 2002, the leader of the Tijuana cartel is killed in a shootout with police. One of the brothers who had supposedly tried to assassinate El Chapo at the airport A year later, the leader of the Gulf Cartel is arrested. Two major cartels are now without leadership. El Chapo sees an opportunity. He pushes into Tijuana and Gulf territory, triggering brutal fighting. Nuevo Laredo, an area along the US-Mexican border, practically turns into a war zone. Former forces of the Mexican
C'est
army
une dinguerie,
begin
partir en guerre. Comme ça. Eux, ils s'en foutent, hein. Ils risquent leur vie pour l'argent, frère.
working for El Chapo. They clash with what's left of the Gulf Cartel, whose core fighters were partly trained by the US. Early on, the violence results in more than 1,000 deaths, many of them civilians.
Milliers.
And that's only the beginning. In 2006, Felipe Calderón becomes Mexico's new president. Determined to crack down on organized crime, he declares war on the cartels and deploys the military. The violence escalates dramatically. Between 2007 and 2014, over 160,000 people died in the course of the war on drugs in Mexico.
En 2006 et 2014.
In these years of
160
bloodshed,
cas.
El Chapo rises. He becomes the world's most wanted criminal, transforming the Sinaloa cartel into one of the most powerful criminal organizations in history. It becomes the top supplier of drugs to the United States: cocaine, heroin, methamphetamine, and fentanyl. El Chapo
Les gars, vous pensez que les States, ils savaient pas ça? Vous croyez que Zarma, ils savaient pas que la drogue rentrait?
cartel
Ils savaient bien que la drogue rentrait, vous inquiétez pas.
operates in 50 countries and generates
À mon
billions of
avis.
dollars in profits
À
each
mon
year.
avis. Liberté
In
d'expression.
turn, El Chapo becomes extremely wealthy, eventually making Forbes' list of the world's billionaires. No wonder it's hard to keep him locked up.
Milliardaire. T'imagines, tu deviens milliardaire avec la drogue.
El Chapo's rescue commando needs to know the exact location of his prison cell, so they smuggle a GPS watch into his prison cell, disguised as a food item. Now the workers know in what direction they need to dig. Over the span of a year, they dig a sophisticated tunnel, a carefully planned complex construction, costing approximately $5 million to make.
5
The tunnel
millions.
is 1.5 kilometers long.
Quelqu'un qui a 1 milliard. Mais lui en plus, il a les 1 milliard en cash. Hein. C'est-à-dire, c'est pas comme les trucs de compagnie là, qui ont 1 milliard en stock. Ils sont cash. 5 millions, c'est rien.
And 1.70 meters high. It is reinforced by a wooden frame. There are lights and even a ventilation system. Digging a tunnel creates a lot of dirt, so the workers build a rail system with a motorcycle adapted to it to move the dirt out of the tunnel. The construction is also supposed to function as an escape
Motorcycle et
vehicle
tout.
later on.
Moto et tout. Shit.
But how did El Chapo end up in El Altiplano in the first place? Andrew Hogan is an agent with the Drug Enforcement Agency. He wants to take down the most powerful drug lord on Earth, perhaps in history. Currently, he's
Manque pas
looking
de
for
respect
allies,
à
but he
Pablo.
soon discovers somehow there is no task force, no team, not even a single federal agent assigned to the job of bringing El Chapo to justice. So he
Quand je vous disais que hein, les States, ils étaient au courant.
takes a Spanish class and prepares to move to
Personne
Mexico.
dessus, hein.
Meanwhile, one of Andrew's colleagues in the US manages to get the pin to El Chapo's BlackBerry, thanks to someone in his inner circle. He tracks down his phone to the holiday resort Cabo San Lucas. The colleague immediately calls Andrew. They're excited, and so they pass the information to the officials in Mexico. The DEA and Mexican police quickly head down to the place where El Chapo is supposedly hiding, but he's nowhere to be found. Next, they narrow down El Chapo's phone signal to one of 3 mansions near the resort Cabo San Lucas. This time, it's a hit. He's there. But before the forces arrive, El Chapo just escapes through the back door. Somehow he makes it to an airstrip without being caught. And
Comme par hasard. Comme par hasard. Les gars, vous voyez tout ça, vous croyez vraiment que c'est échappé tout seul? Comme par hasard, il savait quand il venait. Subhanallah, il y a une révélation.
to safety. El Chapo always seems to be one step ahead. He constantly changes his SIM cards and phones, and simply outsmarts the authorities. One DEA agent supposedly said the Mexicans couldn't catch El Chapo if he was standing at the fucking Starbucks across the street from the embassy. But Andrew Hogan doesn't give up.
Les gars, l'argent, ça fait parler. Même les États, ça fait parler.
In May 2012,
Tout le
he
monde,
moves
tout le
to
monde.
Mexico City with his family and takes over the Sinaloa case. In the months that follow, he and his team begin intercepting members of El Chapo's inner circle. Bit by bit, they uncover the cartel's complex communication system, how often numbers are changed, possible codenames, and GPS locations. Slowly, a picture begins to emerge. One day, El Chapo seemingly wants to meet an underling in person, and he sends one of his chauffeurs
Attends, il avait dit qu'il était en 54. Et là, c'est 2014. Donc du coup, il a 60 ans. 60 ans, il tient encore le rinté. Ah, l'ancien.
to pick him up. Hogan tracks his phone. The chauffeur finally arrives at a place in Culiacan. The signal leads to a group of 5 houses. Hogan organizes a capture operation with dozens of Mexican Marines, helicopters, and trucks, and he joins the mission himself. They surround the property and storm inside. But once again, El Chapo is gone. Instead, they find a strangely placed bathtub covering the entrance to a tunnel that leads into the sewers of Culiacan. But this time, the Marines manage to stay on El Chapo's tail. 3 days later, they find out that one of his men had driven him to the coastal town of Mazatlan, to a hotel. The Marines enter the 4th floor of the hotel. They storm into room 401, heading straight for the bedroom. El Chapo is with his family. He barricades himself in the bathroom with an assault rifle. His wife pleads with the soldiers not to harm their daughters. Shortly after El Chapo surrenders, they got him. Andrew Hogan's job is done now. He
Ah,
caught the most
je pense qu'il avait pas payé sa taxe, hein. Sa taxe à l'État uni.
wanted man on the planet, and he worries for the safety of his family, who moved to Mexico with him. So they board a plane back to the US. Meanwhile, El Chapo goes to Altiplano. The US is pushing hard for his extradition. This would likely be his doom, the end of his reign. Time for another tunnel.
Ouais, c'est déjà échappé une fois. Il va s'échapper encore.
The rescue team and the workers manage to locate the exact spot of El Chapo's cell shower. They build a 10-meter vertical passageway that connects the tunnels to the cell, including a ladder. All this digging and drilling creates a lot of noise. Several inmates are complaining, but the guards ignore them. El Chapo's rescue team manages to complete the 5 million tunnel directly into his prison cell, without anyone interfering. All that's left is breaking through the cell floor, and thus comes the day. El Chapo sits on his bed. A surveillance camera monitors him closely. The camera also records audio. You can hear television, the volume is turned up. But you also hear loud banging noises. Probably someone is breaking through the cell floor. Next, El Chapo begins to pace up and down in his cell. After some time, he walks to his shower stall, bends over, and goes back to his bed. He removes his shoes, sits for a second. Then he walks behind the shower wall and simply disappears. He squeezes
Ah, les gars, quand il s'est échappé, vous croyez qu'il était calme? Vous croyez qu'il a ressenti des sensations que on ne pourra jamais revoir?
through the hole in the ground. It's just 50 by 50 centimeters wide. 1 meter below, he finds footing on a ladder. He climbs down 10 meters into the ground until he reaches the tunnel.
Non, nous on dit, te rappelles qu'on a fait ça, te rappelles qu'on a fait ça? Lui il dit, te rappelles quand je me suis échappé de prison?
Someone is already waiting for him, likely
La
his wife's
moto,
brother.
tout ça.
The rescuer sits on the motorcycle on rails. El Chapo climbs on behind him. Together, they make the 1.5-kilometer ride to the other end of the tunnel.
C'est
When they
dingue.
arrive, El Chapo and his companion climb up a small ladder through the exit shaft. They end up in an unfinished house, covered with construction material. An ATV is parked outside. They drive a short distance to a warehouse and switch to an SUV. Then they drive for 2 hours, until they arrive at an airstrip. A plane is already waiting.
Attends,
They board it and fly to Sinaloa.
cartel de Sinaloa. J'en profite pour faire
Months later,
un petit truc, placement produit pour le bun, les gars. C'est bien, moi je veux ça.
one of El Chapo's sons posts a tweet. I'm doing fine here. You already know with whom. Attached is a photo, presumably with his father. The
Ils sont
tweet is
fous.
tagged with a location, Costa Rica.
Il me balance direct. C'est à cause de ça qu'il attrape, à cause d'un tweet, c'est très très grave.
Back up for a second. Some things about this spectacular escape just don't add up. There's video footage of guards watching their screens as El Chapo disappears, yet it takes them 20 minutes to check his cell. They even wait a few more minutes before they finally enter and check the escape hole. Also, it seems unlikely that building such a tunnel truly went unnoticed. After all, inmates actively complained about the drilling noise. A large majority of Mexicans believe the escape was an inside job. Shortly after
Ça,
El
c'est
Chapo's
sûr,
second
ça, c'est
prison
sûr.
escape, the prison's warden and 2 other officials were fired. Next, 4 Mexican officials were charged. 2 were members of Mexico's Secret Service, based at the prison. The other 2 were guards who sat in the control room, monitoring El Chapo's
Ça
cell.
c'est sûr, les gars. Les gars, S'il y a quelqu'un qui vient vous voir, qui vous dit je te donne 10 millions, ou même 1 million, même 100K, pour les Mexicains, no offense bien sûr, mais parce que le coût de la vie là-bas il est moins cher. Bien sûr, tu prends faire échapper quelqu'un.
The accusation is that they bought El Chapo valuable time by not raising the alarm once the drug lord was gone. And
Tu
El
te fais virer,
Chapo,
tu te fais virer, tu gagnes, t'as gagné ce que tu gagnes en 10 ans, même plus.
again becomes one of the most wanted criminals on Earth. The pressure to finally bring him to
5
justice
millions.
is higher than ever.
Et
The hunt is on. Then El Chapo makes a crazy move. He knows he's considered a legend in
J'aime
Mexico,
beaucoup.
and he wants even more fame. A movie about
c'est
his
ça,
life on the
c'est
big
ça les gars. 60 ans, il veut de la fame. Ça y est, t'as fait tes sous. Reste tranquille.
screen. Sean Penn is already involved in a production about him, along with Mexican actress Kate Del
S'en
Castillo.
fout.
Castillo manages to contact El Chapo and his associates. Finally, El Chapo agrees to meet her and Sean Penn in person to talk about the movie, while technically he's on the run. This is a photo of the meetup. Sean Penn interviews El
Ah, il est en fuite et il va faire un film.
Chapo about his career
C'est quoi,
as a
ça?
drug lord, a story later published by the Rolling Stone. In it, Penn reveals that El Chapo's escape tunnel engineers have been flown to Germany for 3 months of extensive additional training.
Il y a des
necessary
ingénieurs
to
et
deal
tout.
with the low-lying water table beneath the prison. It's a gripping read. Beneath his smile, there's a doubtlessness to his facial expression. A question comes to mind as I observe his face, both as he speaks as while he listens. What is it that removes all doubt from a man's eyes? Is it power, admirable clarity, or soullessness? But according to government sources, the interview is also a crucial factor for investigators to get closer to El Chapo. Apparently, all the while, they're monitoring Penn and Castillo's movements very closely. It's October 9th, 2015. Mexican special forces are closing in on him in the mountains of Sinaloa. After a while, they actually spot him. He's only got one bodyguard with him. This is their moment. They take off after them, chasing them through the terrain. As they get nearer, El Chapo falls off a cliff. His bodyguard finds him and carries him to the depths of the
Allez.
forest. The special forces lose sight of them and they escape. A catastrophic failure.
C'est une dinguerie, frère. Mais c'est
But
Houdini
the
ou quoi, lui?
authorities don't give up the hunt. In January 2016, they get another chance. The Marines manage to locate El Chapo once again in the coastal city of Los Mochis. The clue comes from a taco order placed from a white van. Witnesses say the driver is one of El Chapo's men.
De
The
tacos.
Marines begin to surveil the car.
Là,
It ultimately leads them to a safe
tu te fais attraper. T'as esquivé le truc pendant je sais pas combien d'années. Tu commandes un kebab. C'est là que tu te fais attraper.
house. A few hours later, the soldiers storm the place. Cartel gunmen try to hold them off. A gunfight breaks out. The Marines eventually push up to the second floor, then the roof. But El Chapo is gone. True to his form, he and one of his gunmen fled through a
Ça
hidden tunnel.
s'arrête plus, ce mec.
Right now, they are climbing out of a drainage tunnel a short distance away, right across from a Walmart. El Chapo and his gunmen need to escape
J'ai
quickly.
pas capté là en fait s'il est aux States ou s'il est au Mexique. J'ai
But
aucune
after
idée.
just driving a few blocks, the car breaks down. So they ditch it and lose valuable time. Then they take over another car and manage to get on the highway, but it's too late. Police finally arrest El Chapo, one of history's most powerful drug lords. He
Enfin,
tells the officers, "You are all going to die." 40 of his assassins are supposedly on their way to free
vous
him.
allez tous mourir.
But he gets
40
handed over to the
assassins.
Marine.
Ah, les gars, je vous jure que avec l'argent, gros, lui c'est un milliardaire. Il peut s'acheter une armée. Et il lui restera des sous.
And it's over. After a decade of hide and seek, escaping over and over again, in all likelihood protected by systemic corruption,
Ah non,
Chapo has
60 ans. Franchement là,
finally
il les
been
fait
caught.
pas les gars. Hein. On dirait pas il a 60 ans. Il a
On the
bien
next
vieilli quoi.
day, the Mexican president tweets, "Mission accomplished. We have him."
Il tweet. Vous voulez faire ses stats.
Soon after, El Chapo was extradited to the United States, the one thing he truly feared. On July 17th, 2019,
Putain,
3 years
States.
after his second escape, he was sentenced to life in Colorado's Supermax prison. That's where he remains locked up to this day. The Sinaloa cartel and other Mexican cartels are as strong as ever,
Jusqu'à aujourd'hui.
operating as undeterred global organizations. There's so much more to this story that we couldn't cover in this video, but apparently some video journalist obsessed with maps is about to pick it up very soon.
Bon, je pense que la vidéo elle est finie les gars. Franchement, elle est pas mal l'histoire. Elle était pas mal, mais je vous mens pas. Je préfère l'évasion de Redon Faïd. On va faire le bandeur d'évasion. préfère celle de Red on Fight. Il y a plus d'action, il y a plus de 1. Mais El Chapo, vous pensez que il y a eu un peu de 1? Il y a des liasses qui ont été déposées, les gars. Je vous jure. Avec l'argent, vous pouvez tout faire. Moi, c'est la morale de l'histoire. Avec l'argent, tu peux tout faire. Tu peux tout acheter. Tout s'achète.
Oh, hi friend. Love your stuff.
C'est bon, c'est cool. Bon, vas-y. Franchement, les gars, j'ai bien kiffé la vidéo. Si vous avez bien kiffé, mettez un commentaire. Mettez un like. Abonnez-vous. Parce que cette semaine, ça va bombarder de vidéos. Ok? Donc, tu fais tout ça tranquille. Ok? Merci. Dites-moi si la qualité du microphone aussi elle est mieux. On se dit à la prochaine. A plus.